Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today we are going to be using these Christmas time sentiments and then the Stitchmas die and the diamond stitching die from Spellbinders. So these are going to be a little bit different cards for me. Not too different because you know I'm pretty clean and simple around here. These are the colors I used for the background. I did end up like nixing the wilted violet. I used it the first time around, but I didn't use it the second time around. I didn't really feel like it added anything to it, creating kind of like a dramatic background. I usually don't buy a lot of colored cardstocks, I'm going to be honest with you. I just invest in a whole lot of white and then I kind of do the distress inking to whatever color I need, just because I do like a lot of color variation. You could definitely do this whole technique much quicker with starting with a piece of paper that was pink instead of using the picked raspberry. So my goal here is just pretty much to create like a highlight in the center of the card, because that is where my Stitchmas Cree is going to go, right there in the center. So speaking of the products that I'm using, I actually have, we're going to do a giveaway. Don't worry, I'm not going to mail it. I'll make sure Eric does. Because I don't mail things. You know I don't. And if anybody's going to get them, it will be because my wonderful husband has mailed them. So I will do the picking. How am I going to do the picking? That's a good question. Leave a comment and then we'll just randomly pick it. Or maybe I'll let Peanut pick it. But go ahead and leave a comment and email to get a hold of you. Because I have to have a way to get a hold of you to tell you that you're the winner. But I have two of these Christmas sentiments that when I ordered them, I actually ended up with two. So I have two to give away. They're brand new. And then I will send them with a card made by me, a Christmas card, and you can have yourself a little extra Christmas gift. Won't that be fun? I rarely do giveaways. Just because I know I don't mail things. So, but since I have them and they are brand new, we might as well give them away to somebody who can benefit from them. Yeah, so these cards, like I said, are they are a little bit different for me, but I think they're super cute, and it really kind of made me remember my love of cross-stitching. So I was a cross-stitcher for, well, I guess I still technically am. For years, I cross-stitched. I taught myself how to do it when I was like 15, just because I really liked crafts and I was looking for a way to be creative. This was before I found stamping and coloring. I was a scrapbooker, but I was not like, I didn't use stamps. I scrapbooked. I didn't find card making until I was in my 20s. Yeah, I know it doesn't seem like it should be that way because now I spend so much time doing it, but I didn't really, it was different back then. Like our supplies were different. You know, everything was matted on mats, on mats, on mats, on mats. We matted them with 6 different colors, and then your photo was like a ½ inch thick. But so I taught myself how to cross stitch, and the first one I ever made was like a little Dalmatian one that I gave my sister as a Christmas gift. I have never made myself a cross stitch. The one that I was gonna make for myself, I actually was making while I was at work, like in my downtime at work, which was my bedroom theme when I was younger. Well, I wasn't, when did I pick it? Maybe like when I was 14ish, but it was roses. That's what my bedroom theme was in my parents' house. I had hunter green carpet, much to my mother's dismay because she does not like green. But she let me pick the carpet color and I picked hunter green, and then my bedroom set was like mauve and pink roses. And so I found this gold collection, which were like the really involved, really intricate cross stitches. Because I love a challenge. Gotta love that challenge. And so I was making it. It was like an angel in a rose garden, and I was going to put it in my bedroom. And one of the guys I worked with saw it, and he was like, "Oh, my mom would love this. If I buy another one, will you make it for her?" And so I just ended up giving him the one that I was making, and then I never made the other one that he bought to give me. It's probably still like in my bin at my parents' house. I still have things at my parents' house. Even though I have storage in my own house, And then a lot of times my mom will be like, do you want? And Eric will be like, no, she doesn't want it, because he doesn't want my crap here either. Here, just one thing of note on this background, I am using ground espresso as my darkest color, and you might be thinking like, why would you put a brown on top of this? Distress inks are made to blend together. That is their whole selling point. Like, the way they blend together is amazing, and that you can mix colors and layer them on top of each other, and they look completely different. And so sometimes to get a deeper color, you have to go a little outside of the box. So like with my purple, my deepest color is actually a blue. It's the Chip Sapphire. And on the red, my deepest color is a brown. But it still looks red because of all of the pigment that's underneath it. So don't be afraid to kind of like play around with some of your darker colors if you're trying to get a dramatic background like I am here. So the cross stitching, that's what we're talking about. I made Kim her Dalmatian one. I made one for my grandmother. That was a wreath, which I now have. So I guess technically, but I made it for her. And it's like a wreath of all seasons that I made for her. I've made them I just give them away. I make them and I give them away. And that's what I always did. But I made Nathan one that when I was pregnant with him, I stitched one, but I don't even think I ever put his name on it. Like, I finished it, but then I never went back and put his name on it because we were surprised with him as well. I didn't know what I was having. Here, we're putting these dies down. These dies are pretty intricate, just because they're cutting out all of those holes. Also, you'll notice here my tape isn't sticking that well, and that's because my distress ink is still wet. The tape has a hard time sticking to it if, your distress ink is still wet. But I didn't have any issues. I ran it through twice just to be sure, but I didn't have any issues with them cutting out any of the dies in my platinum. That's what I have. I have a Spellbinders Platinum, and they worked really well. I went through, I actually used the tool-in-one, and you'll see it later when I do some more die cutting, but I did use my little pick just to poke out like the one or two ones that were left over. I'm going to heat emboss the sentiments on my colored backgrounds, and then you'll see there's actually 2 more cards that I didn't show you the whole thing of. I just wanted you to know that there were other options for your stitching dies in case you weren't really feeling the stitching. But I'm going to do kind of like a monochromatic. I'm just going to do everything in gold, and that's what I'm going to be heat embossing in. This is just gold embossing powder. This particular one is Hero Arts, which I really love. It works extremely well. And I'm just going to heat this up until it melts. Embossing powder is still magic to me. I still love watching it melt. And I do preheat my gun before I bring it to the paper just to cut down on warping. For this one, I'm going to just do it in the center and kind of have like this decorative edge. The decorative edge is a little bit busy, so I didn't do anything else to the top of the card. I just left it that really dramatic red. I will caution you, and I know that I've told you this before, but just in case this is the only video of mine you've ever seen, when you're heat embossing on a distress ink background, you have to make sure the background is dry. If you try to put embossing powder over a wet background, it's going to stick to everything, not just your sentiment. I knew mine was dry because there was a day in between them, but if you're doing it all at one time, have no fear. Just hit it with your heat tool beforehand and then just test it. Like, run your embossing powder over the top of it and see if any of it sticks, and then you'll know if you're good or not. Because there are often times, well, before I had Caitlin, there were often times where I would just be doing it all at the same time because that's when I had time to craft, but now it's much more broken up. I think it took me like 2 or 3 days to do these cards, and I was doing the stitching while I was sitting doing sitting on the couch. So here, when I first started, I tried it with just a gold metallic thread. This is a relatively inexpensive thread, I mean, well, all embroidery floss, which is what most of us are using to stitch with, is relatively inexpensive. It's like 90 cents or something for a ream. The gold, because it's fancy, is a little bit more expensive, but I just run it through and then tape it down in the back. Originally, I tried with just the gold, and while it did work, it was very thin and it didn't really fill up the design like I wanted it to. So then I went back and decided that I was going to add in just one strand of white. So I have one strand of white and one strand of gold, and this still looks gold when you look at it, but I was trying to just fill up that space a little bit more, and it worked well. Here, I am removing the stitching that I had because I tried to do a little bit of a back stitch on the part that's the garland, and I just really didn't like it. So I will let you know that when you're using iridescent or metallic floss with your embroidery floss, they don't make friends like two different colors of embroidery floss do. And so it can be a little bit challenging to work with, which is why typically in a cross stitch, it's really just used for accents. Here I used it for the whole thing, and I did kind of have to adjust it from time to time to make sure my strings were the same length, but ultimately it wasn't too terrible to work with, just not as easy as two pieces of colored floss. Just something of note. So I'm just going around and I'm taking each one of the holes and bringing it to the center to create kind of like that circular starburst shape. And then to make sure that it's super easy to kind of transition and I'm not, first of all, wasting a bunch of floss. Second of all, making a mess of my back. I know nobody's going to see the back and it doesn't need to be super neat. But if your back is neat, then it makes it so that your card lays the same way and you don't have like a bulk of floss in one area. And that also rings true for cross stitching. But to make sure that I was kind of getting my floss to be where it needed to be to move on to the next circle, and I wasn't having to drag my floss all over the background or all over the back of my card. You're always going to take, in this particular die, you're always taking it to the center. So anytime that I needed to switch like levels, I just made sure that I did all of the other stitching, and then I left, like for that particular one, I was in the bottom right hand corner in my second row so that I could move down to the second one. Another little tip here when doing the base of the tree, when you're doing a cross stitch, which is what this is what I'm doing here, you want to make sure that you do all of your stitches in the same direction. So I did all of my stitches from the top right to the bottom left, and then now that I'm going in the opposite direction, I'm going to go from the top left to the bottom right, so that way there is that continuity and they're all going in the same direction. That's something that is important in cross stitch, and just it just makes the piece look nicer, really. So here at the beginning you saw me kind of making sure that my floss was the same length and pulling it all the way down, like pulling my needle all the way down to the base of the, like to the card, so that everything would be kind of even. I'm just going to tape it on the back and trim off the excess. That is a little bit different for cross stitch, because with cross stitch you don't make a knot or tape it, you weave it underneath and then where your other stitches are. There are two of these little up and down dies so that you could like cut your diamond pattern out. I just used one just to cut it off the bottom, and then it takes it almost all the way up to the edge, but not completely, and so I just trimmed that off with my scissors. Here I'm going to be doing the same thing. This is one piece of white and one piece of metallic, and then I really like the diamonds. I think they're super pretty. Not that the tree's not, but I think that the diamond is more kind of functional. And I did it the same way so that it kind of created a starburst pattern. But there's a lot of different ways that you could stitch this that would create multiple different looks. So you could skip the middle hole altogether if you wanted to, and then just do them, across from each other. You could do them horizontally so that your stitches were going that way. I preferred the starburst pattern. I thought it was really pretty, especially in the gold, and so that's the way that I did it. Yeah, the cross stitches when I was younger, like I said, I made that one for Nathan, but I don't even think I ever finished it. And then I started another one when I went back to dispatching that I was maybe going to put in my craft room. And that one I'm to the back stitching portion, which is basically just the outlining for those of you who don't cross stitch. And I kind of got sidetracked and never went back to it. I have a whole bunch of half finished cross stitches in my drawer, and I do enjoy it, but it's kind of one of those things that, like, I would do it while I was watching TV. I would do it while watching movies, or like I said, in my downtime when I was at work, I would stitch, because it doesn't take much to set it aside, and it certainly isn't something I really have to, be concerned that I'm not going to be able to find my place when I go back to it. So with the switching, like I talked about before, I'm going to stitch the top half of this from left to right, and then you might wonder how to get back to that other area so you aren't dragging your string. So I'm going to go from left to right halfway, and then I'm going to start on the left hand side at the halfway point, and then come back around to the right so I can move on to that next diamond again, so I don't have to waste a bunch of string or have a super messy background that's maybe going to create some issues when I go to adhere my card. The other cards that I made, which you will see, they do have, one has stitching on it, one does not, because you can still utilize these dies in a much faster way if maybe you don't have time to do stitching, or you want to kind of stretch your supplies. I'm a big fan of that. Here I'm just playing around with this gold floss to make sure everything is level, so I'm pulling it out and then pulling it tight. It got caught. Sometimes it can get caught by the other string. Anyway, so I used some colored floss and some rhinestones for the other tree, and you'll see that when we get to it. And then for the last one, I just die cut the tree. I backed it with some gold mirror paper, and then, so this is the one that I stitched that has color on it. So I used the same gold for the star at the top, and then I used green and then brown. I wanted the garland to be a different color. I have a light green cardstock underneath it, and so here I'm just marking it with a pencil where the garland portion will be, and I'm going to use a gold metallic pen to just color right over that pencil line. And you can see it, believe it or not, you can see it through the die cut onto the card. And you could do this with any opaque pen. So the metallics, there's a lot of jelly roll ones that are opaque, you can't see through them. And then, or you could even color it with a marker if you were looking for maybe red garland. Here I did the gold, keeping with my gold theme for the whole rest of the card, and was really happy with the way that it came out. In the light, you can definitely see where it's at. This is the one, I die cut it with the Stitchmas tree, and then I die cut it with the outline that also comes with it. I kind of wish that I would have die cut the actual tree from some glitter paper or something, just so that there would be some way to differentiate it from the background, but I didn't. I just did white on white and kept it pretty simple with just a black sentiment. But you could for sure do this in multiple ways. Here I'm just using a adhesive eraser to get rid of the sticky on my background, and then I will also use it to get rid of the sticky on my tree. Here's that tool-in-one I was telling you about. I have the older version of the Spellbinders one. The new one is gold and white, but this one is a little bit older, but it works awesome to knock out all the little pieces in your die cuts, but also in your dies. So if you just kind of scrub these little brush pieces over it, it knocks out all of the die cuts like that are left over in there. Really quick, really easy, so you don't have to like hole poke every single one of them. Here is, we're back to our purple card. I'm just using some dry adhesive. I was worried about the liquid glue kind of leaking through, and I have a this actually is just a scrap piece of the gold mirror cardstock, and I'm just going to put that behind there, and then this card is done once it's on its little backer. Because I just wanted it to be that golden purple, and this one actually ended up being my, even though I don't like purple, I know, this one actually ended up being my favorite card. I think it just is super pretty with like the pinkish purple and the gold. So I really, really liked this one. This one, since we have like the decorative edge, I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of that gold mirror cardstock at the bottom of my card. And then I decided to pop it up on foam just for a little bit of extra dimension and something different. I did not put it over the stitch because you can still see through the holes, and I didn't want that adhesive to be visible. So I figured, 4-5 pieces of foam tape ought to be good enough to adhere it, and it was. So that is that one. This one, I am going to adhere to this green cardstock. So like the leaf portion of the die will be green, but then that garland portion is gold. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but in real life you can definitely see the gold through there. And then I'm just going to give it some ornaments with some rhinestones. This particular pack of rhinestones is from Honeybee, and it's the vintage Christmas set, and it has 2 different colors of red. It has a dark red and a light red, and I used both of them. And then I used I think there's some gold ones just on around the sentiment. I didn't really like where I put this rhinestone, so I just picked it back up and moved it. And then again, the sentiment is from that same Christmas sentiment set. Here, this is the one that is not stitched at all, so I put down, again, some of that gold mirror cardstock, and then I'm just going to adhere my die cut right on top of it. To dress it up even more, I'm going to kind of do the same trick with the ornaments. I'm going to put some gold rhinestones on there to kind of act as some bling, and just a really simple black sentiment. I think black and gold are a pretty classic combination. So we're almost done with the video because we're put together all the cards. So I just want to remind you that in order to be in the drawing for the to win the sentiments, make sure you leave a comment on this video on YouTube, and leave me an email address. You have to leave me a way to get a hold of you. I did, remember how I told you I had regrets about not cutting it out of glitter paper? I did go in and add some clear shimmer to the tree to kind of set it apart. It was not as effective as glitter paper would have been, but it did do something to add some shine to it. And then these are just all 4 cards, different ways that you can kind of use them. Still love the little diamond one. I should have made more of those. I didn't. But this purple one is by far my favorite. So you let me know which one's your favorite, or which way you think that you could see yourself using them. And then, of course, leave your email with your comment. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye.